Hi everyone! So I chose to do the Top Trumps project using the Pokemon API, and on top of all the required tasks, my code generates 5 random Pokemons for the player to choose from. The player plays 5 rounds with an opponent, and the outcome of each game is recorded and stored into a CSV file. So I'm just giving you a quick demo now. So whilst writing and testing the code, there were quite a few times where I typed something in incorrectly into the input, which would then give me a JSON decode error, and then the game would just stop running because it was something that Python didn't recognise. So after Googling and a few trials and errors, I changed the code and used the try and except statement, where I'm telling Python to run the game as usual, except in an error, where instead a random Pokemon would be allocated to the player. So here you can see that code running where I've purposely typed the Pokemon name incorrectly, and then we've been given a randomly selected Pokemon. I think one of the things that I found most difficult was trying to get the total sum of the scores from each round. Initially, my code was just going back to 0 for every new game, and the return function was definitely something that took me a while to get my head around. When recording and storing the high scores, I also learnt how to tell Python to check whether a CSV file currently exists, and if not, to create a new file, and if it does exist, then amend the current file by adding the new data to it. So if I had more time, I would write the code so that Python would choose a random stat if there was an error, in the same way that a random Pokemon was allocated earlier if the input was something that Python didn't recognise. I'd also work on changing the input to all lowercase before we call the get URL, because I noticed that even if you type the Pokemon name correctly, but all caps were used, you'd still get an error. I'd also like to use a different API to create a similar game. And then finally, I'd love to look into fetching the Pokemon image as well to display as part of the game. But then of course this will mean going more into front-end development.